Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. I don't know why I just did a little McDonald's jingle there. I
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, here we are. Here we are, Paul.
Mm-hmm. What's going on, Brad? What do you got there?
I'm a little perplexed,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm honest, about why Amazon is creating 8 new devices with their thing built in.
So, yeah, I have a theory about this.
Hold on, can I take a guess? Is that their theory is they don't know why the first one works, so they're just going to try everything and see what works?
Yeah, who knows? Like the microwave might be the best-selling Alexa device at some point. We do. I can picture talking to that thing. I don't. I've been thinking a lot about Amazon lately. This. Did you actually? Let me just ask you. This is sort of related. Did you just buy? You did just buy a bunch of shirts inexpensively from. Was it Amazon or a local or a
No,
retail?
it was from H&M. And this is
Okay.
one of them, actually, right here. Doesn't it look nice? It's
All right. Well, this thing I have on is a Carhartt shirt. There are no Carhartts near me in Pennsylvania. There used to be
not
one in
much
Dedham.
is,
It was very convenient. So when I needed a new car shirt, I would go over there and I would buy 10 of them at a time or something. Well, because there are none of these shirts, I buy them online, and I haven't been able to find the actual shirt that I used to be buying. And these are like lighter, which is actually kind of good, but they stain really easily. And I've thrown away at least a dozen of these this year. And I got to tell you, that's a lot of money. And I just was on Amazon, and I was like, Amazon. It's like a polo shirt, but it was like it's basically an Amazon Basics $12 polo shirt.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy this thing. And if it works, I'm going to buy like 10 of them. The reason I mention that is that aside from the obvious, you reminded me of it, is that I sort of feel like Amazon is moving this way with Alexa, and that the way that they can keep this thing going, because there's sort of a consensus that Google is going to beat them. Some people believe they've already beaten them, which is kind of interesting, that the Google devices are actually already outselling them. If you look at it kind of at a high level, it's hard to understand how Amazon could beat Google in this market. I mean, Google has all of this expertise around search, and it's just a broader use case for these devices. But Amazon does have this huge advantage of their store. It's kind of like the Apple advantage with their physical stores, right? It's everyone, not everyone. I mean, many people have an Amazon Prime account. Everyone basically shops at Amazon to some degree. They somehow manage not to kind of piss off the world like Google has or Apple has in some ways, like Microsoft used to.
Yeah.
There is a growing feeling that, they've destroyed businesses. There's no doubt about it. But, people tend to put their own needs above all else, and it's like, yeah, I don't like that they put Barnes & Noble out of business, or I guess Borders or whatever. But my God, this is so cheap, and they sell their own stuff cheap. Amazon's Kindles are cheap. Their tablets are cheap. I mean, they're cheap in every sense of the word. It makes sense for them to be the low cost, high volume option. And this is a strategy I think that could work for them. I don't think they're going to beat Google, but I think there's going to be 2 major players, and they're going to be one of them. And I sort of saw that, and I thought, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think there's this notion that everyone thinks you always have to be number one all the time, which granted winning is great, but there is a massive market in this space for number 2. The reason why I think this is interesting is Google very well will have, and if they don't already, has the better product. But Amazon, by the very nature of the company that it is, I guarantee will probably almost always sell more devices with that product baked in.
Yeah, and in our industry, there are all these examples through the years of kind of low cost, high volume versus low volume, high cost. Apple and the Mac and versus PCs, and you make these kind of arguments. Well, Windows PCs are 90-something% of all the PCs in the world. Apple makes a ton of money on the Mac. You can do that with the iPhone. The iPhone is only 14% of the market. It is the number 1 phone in the market by many measures, including maybe the most crucial one, profits and revenues. The advantage that Amazon has, though, over the other players in other markets that were high volume, low cost, is that they can hide the losses on these things because it indirectly benefits the rest of the business.
Yep.
If they can get people to buy stuff off of these devices, if all they're doing is getting rid of any friction between I need something and here it comes, then this platform is a win. And if consumers can use them to play music and to ask them to tell jokes and whatever the stupid stuff that people do on these things, it's also a win for them, right? It's interesting. It's just an interesting dynamic, and I think it's cool for me, because Google, I feel like Google kind of did to Microsoft what Microsoft did to the rest of the industry when it came up from below, and it's like, well, how do you beat low cost? Well, you make it free, and free web services, free free-ish Android mobile systems that are very successful. Well, how do you beat that? I mean, what kind of aggressive, crazy company do you have to find that could actually beat that? Amazon, the weirdest fish in the ocean, and just by virtue of it being unique,
The Amazon is a really interesting company, and I am actually wondering if they may get hit with antitrust at some point in the near future. The reason being is that they just launched.
They absolutely will.
They just launched a new line of diapers called like Earth and Eden or something like that. They take on honest companies, organic diapers, whatever you want to call them. Here's the thing that Amazon is doing. They can look at all the sales data that they have, and they say, oh, look, 1 million people a month buy, in this case, diapers. So then what they can do is they can estimate of that million people, how many they think they can sell to. Let's just say it's 100,000. They can go to a diaper company and spec out a product that will guarantee them margin, announce it, and totally collapse an industry around it because they have the exact data to launch the product. They've done it with batteries. They've done it with everything. And it's very interesting in how far they're going to be able to push that before they just kill everything.
It's funny.
Your shirts are a great example of that.
Exactly. This thing is going to be worth $8 total at most. And actually, since I can only wear it once before it's stained forever, it's actually worth even less than that. But or maybe I'm just a slob. I don't know. But you stepped around something that I think is actually fairly profound. When you were talking about diapers, I thought back to Toys R Us. And Toys R Us used to offer diapers for less than their cost to get mothers with their young babies into the store, knowing that the kid would be like, oh my God, grabbing for stuff, and that maybe they would buy something else, and that's how they would make money. Now is that anti-competitive? I don't know. I mean, Amazon later was accused of doing this with ebooks, putting ebooks cheaper than they were paying for in some cases to kind of get this market rolling so they could control it. Is that anti-competitive? Yeah, sure. Now, Toys R Us just went out of business. So that model worked for them for a while. And ironically, they were put out of business by Amazon, actually. But Amazon, it's funny, we talk about Google as a business, and one of the predatory things that they can do is they're the gateway to the internet. They know what people are searching for, and they know, I mean, think about the depth of this, right? It's like, I went to the doctor and I'm worried about my heart and I'm typing in, heart problems or, whatever it might be. And now Google's like, oh my God, people are searching for heart problems. We might want to offer a service with, for around health or something. They've literally put businesses out of business by knowing what people were looking for. And now Google has like a flights business. They're competing with their alleged partners like Expedia and all those other travel sites. So I don't know what the cost or how this works for Google, but it's expensive to wind these things up, even though they're just online services. But think about how Amazon does the same thing. You're literally a shopping. You have the same data, but it's about what people want to buy. You use the diapers example. I can assure you the reason this happened was because they were undercutting Toys R Us millions of years ago and now undercutting everyone else. And they said, you know what? We could sell diapers for less than everybody. Let's sell diapers ourselves. And we could sell, they sell everything. That's what you do. You start to see these things. You start browsing around. You're like, I want a USB cable. It's a stupid little thing. It doesn't cost very much money. The Amazon one is cheaper. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy the Amazon one. That's a really valuable set of data to know about people because it can change. That's what changes your business.
Yep.
It's interesting. No one has, even Google doesn't have this. Google's attempts to start shopping services have all failed.
Yep. It's interesting. It's going to be real interesting to watch because let's just say they were found antitrust. I mean, they can't really break it up. Well, I guess they could if they broke up AWS and then split out the cash. Because if you separate AWS from Amazon sales, their whole market changes because they don't have this massive influx of capital every month from web services. Granted, they make money from, well, now they do at least.
I don't know. I don't know how you fix this, because honestly, the bigger threat from Amazon isn't that it has AWS and the shopping stuff. It's that they have the shopping stuff and they're able to compete with their own suppliers. With the products. So it's by the way, it's something I complained about with Borders. Borders is also a company that's now out of business. Borders started its own imprint for book publishing, right? It's kind of shitty. It's like it's a tough thing. And I'm sure at the time it was kind of a cutthroat market. And they're like, how can we squeeze out more earnings here? And this kind of made sense. Barnes and Noble does the same thing. Amazon literally does the same thing, of course. And then Amazon does it with physical goods, which I find really interesting.
Yep.
I don't know how it's not, I don't even know that it's splitting up the company. It's almost like you have to, I don't know what you do. I don't know how you fix this. How do you tell Amazon they have to charge more for something because everyone else is charging more? Yeah. Or just not. Yeah. Right. Just not sell it at all.
Anyways, you might soon be able to buy a microwave with Echo built in. And you can scream at your, the Sky computer to set 30 more seconds on your food, which actually, to be honest, could be super convenient. That if you're across the kitchen.
Well, across the kitchen, this is the beauty of these kind of ecosystems. You could be upstairs and you could hear the microwave goes off and you say, or the oven or whatever it is. And you could, from the room you're in, say, I need 30 more seconds or I need one more minute, maybe lower the temperature a little bit because I'm going to, if it's an oven. There, and again, this is why this is kind of a weird area. This is something Microsoft tried to prove in its antitrust trials. It's something Google will try to prove in its own here in the EU, maybe if it doesn't just settle immediately, which is that you have to counter the impact of the competition that you're doing with the benefits you're bringing to the consumer. For example, if I'm putting, by buying an Amazon shirt, I maybe am harming these other companies that make shirts. They all make shirts in terrible ways, right? They employ children in countries that, in other parts of the world, and they, the whole thing. We all know how that works. So, is Amazon any worse than Carhartt? Carhartt's an American company, actually. Maybe that's not a good example, but well, I don't know. I don't know where the shirt's made. Actually, I'm sure it's made in China, but the ethical thing is kind of interesting, and the consumer benefit is kind of interesting. And I think this is actually a big benefit for Google when it comes to these cases. Should they choose to fight, their stuff is actually excellent,
Yeah.
Amazon stuff, well, let's be honest, it's kind of low rent. I mean, not to be a jerk about it, but their tablets are garbage, and a lot of the stuff they make it's fine, but I don't think it's technically any better than anything else, but that's not why I'm buying it. I'm buying it because it's like, oh my God, it's like 1/3 the price.
Yep. Speaking of screwing over people that you work with, Microsoft through its Microsoft 365 is launching a managed desktop service. And for those of you who don't know what that is, Microsoft will, for one low monthly fee, give you a piece of hardware, Surface hardware currently. It will eventually be HPE and Dell. They will hand it over to you. They will manage the device, all the security, software, and everything else. Make sure this thing is always up to date and running, bug-free trial, no issues with patches and all that good stuff. And they'll give you a license to Windows 10 and to Office 365 and to, I think, their managed desktop or their managed device solution in the cloud, all for one monthly fee called Managed Desktop as a Service, which is what a bunch of their partners have been doing for a decade. And now Microsoft says it's my turn to eat some of the pie, and they are carving it out.
Yeah, so the two things that come to mind here for me, and this is something I wanted to ask you about ahead of the show, but the morning got away from me, is I sort of view this as another tier of Microsoft 365, which I sort of view as another tier of Office 365. This is in many ways, not this specific service, but this collection of related services, not all of which will include hardware, I think is the future of Microsoft in the enterprise. Like this
absolutely.
This is it.
Yep. This is them completing the loop of building the software, offering the software, managing the software on hardware that they built.
Yeah, it's the full meal deal. It's interesting. Is there any understanding what the price of this thing is? When you go from Office 365 to various tiers of Microsoft 365, you can kind of have an understanding. And most cases
So
of the cost.
it can't be, they didn't list a price for many reasons, probably one of which it would scare many people off, would be my guess is the first one. But they cite saying, hey, it depends on the hardware that you pick. It depends on how many people you have and all those good things. Because what this comes with is 24/7 desktop support for the end user, which can't be cheap for Microsoft because they have to staff up for somebody to actually answer that phone. Also, every 3 years, you will get a new piece of hardware. And if your hardware breaks, they will overnight you one to replace it.
Yeah, I'm curious how this scales. I mean, obviously, this is only going to make sense for pretty big businesses in the beginning. Obviously, their goal must be to, I mean, this might be a way to attract small businesses, but, you can kind of look at the escalating cost structure, right? I mean, a basic version of a commercial version of Office 365 that includes the Office suite is I think is $125 a year. You can tack on, however that works out, a month. Let's call it 10, what is that, 10, 15? Actually, it might be closer to $15 a month if you pay for it that way. Microsoft 365 kind of goes up in a corresponding way. If Surface Plus program, I know they just got rid of it for consumers, but, a $2,000 device paid for over 2 years, whatever that is, $50 to $70 a month. I mean, you're going to get quickly into the $100 a month area. And it's like, that's kind of a tough, it's just, it's kind of a tough one.
But the one thing it does do, though, I know you said you thought larger business. I think it might actually appeal to smaller because one of the things it does, though, is it simplifies your cost structure, right? You know that to onboard a new employee, it's going to be $125 a month in overhead to get them a PC, to get them Windows, get them up and running and everything they need. And you write one check per employee per month.
Yeah.
And it's,
I
granted,
honestly, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you can do it other ways and piecemeal things together and make it cheaper. You absolutely can. But if you were purely looking for, I want to write a check and have all my stuff work, this is that solution. So,
I mean, honestly, that would benefit bigger companies too. But I think the bit that you're absolutely right on is that this for smaller businesses, Microsoft's goal has always been to find those companies that aspire to be bigger than they are, or are literally becoming bigger than they are. And in this transition age that we're in the old days when you had to make a step up from a truly small business, the possibilities were kind of crappy. You could get like Windows Small Business Server, which was this really complex suite of server applications that could run on one or more pieces of hardware, had to be in a physical location where you had an office. These days, everything is obviously cloud services and so forth, but we still need these devices to bring around with us, phones, PCs, whatever. And the piece that really becomes hard, I think, for the smaller businesses as they grow is the management stuff, right?
Yeah.
And just ensuring that we are complying with our own set of rules, or that someone's not going to lose a laptop and a precious company business is now out in the open for anyone to grab. That's it. And we're not, a lot of these businesses, no matter how big they get, are not going to have the on-site, on-prem server computing hardware they might have had 10 or 20 years ago. They're going to go to the cloud at every step of the way. And so this kind of gets them into the system in a way that's frictionless and less complex and expensive as well.
Yep. I think I would bet that their pitch to their partners or everybody else is that Microsoft, I would imagine, is probably going to be the most expensive solution, much like they maybe do with their Surface hardware. And if you are looking for something more cost effective, you can go to one of their cloud service providers, as they call them, I believe.
But it's a known quantity too. It's Microsoft, right? I mean, I think for a lot of companies, it's like, look, it might be $5 more a month, but let's just go with Microsoft.
Yep.
That's interesting. I'm really curious about the pricing on this. It's interesting. I'm also curious just whether, they just got rid of Surface Plus and everything, but I still feel like there's a Microsoft 365 for consumers that can make sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know what price point it makes sense. I mean, to me today, the $69 you'd pay for Office 365 Personal, or the $99 especially that you pay for Office 365 Home, are still in the no-brainer category. Everyone should have these things, but I don't know, how you go from there, and how would you sell a consumer, like a family, like, okay, for $120 a year, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the consumer side of it. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they're doing this. They'll bundle Windows 10, they'll bundle 24-hour service, they'll bundle everything else, and be like, look, you pay us $500 for the year, and you get 5 tablets for the family, and there you go.
It makes the Surface Plus cancellation not make a lot of sense because, the way you remove complexity for consumers is where, as support for Windows 7 runs out, the computers they're currently using are probably too old or too out of date or whatever it is. They would have upgraded it anyway, right? The thing was free. It's still kind of free depending on how you look at it. It's really not hard to do. How do you make this a no-brainer? And maybe it's what you just said. It's like a laptop cart shows up at your house with 5 computers or something. It's kind of hard to imagine, but maybe.
Yeah, we will see. We shall see. I would imagine at Ignite we'll hear a lot more about this managed desktop because that's kind of one of the places you offer it. Although it's a little awkward too because that's replacing some of the jobs of the people who are there.
Well, yeah, but that's this is the same conversation we had at the for the move to cloud computing. It's like, guys, the industry evolves. I mean, and it's in a way it's like the conversation we had earlier about Google and Amazon and how predatory they are to their own partners. So I guess that's one way to look at it. But I'm sure Microsoft has always had a sales job that they do for partners. And they have a conference around that. There's a sales job that they do for the companies that are technically partners, but they're in the kind of the ecosystem, resellers and so forth. And Ignite is part of that as well. So it's like going from Exchange on-prem to Office 365, and now we're taking it further. And so now there's companies over on the side like Dell, it's like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah. We do this, well, you can be part of it. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be as lucrative, Dell. I'm sorry, but it may be the way the world's going.
Interesting. You got anything else for today, Mr. Thurrott?
No, I feel like that was a lot of stuff.
It was. I feel like this was hearty discussions.
I didn't anticipate any of that. That was kind of interesting. I meant to write well before today something about the iPhone XS, and I finally did publish that. I struggled with this for a long time. There was a bunch of stuff around money and how much things cost that I got sidetracked by that. Remember when the iPhone was $299 or $199 thing. But I finally did put it up, and you probably know this, Brad, but if you don't, the reviews are out. And so if you're looking for, do not read the New York Times review. That is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. But The Verge has a very good review. Wired does as well. Tom's, which is the guy I like who used to work over at Laptop Mag, wrote that review. Definitely read these things. It is absolutely the evolutionary S-year upgrade. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing to keep in perspective is that for most people, this is still a revolutionary upgrade because they're on older iPhones. And so
someone like myself.
Yeah, if you're on iPhone 6 through 8, there's a whole new thing going on. One thing you said, by the way, and I'll just ask you briefly to reconsider this, is you said that you were going to wait to experience iOS 12 until you got the new device. Mm-hmm. And the only reason, if you had any thought at all that you might wait 3 or 6 months or something before you bought a new phone, I would tell you to get iOS 12 now because what's in there is the new gesture navigation that debuted on the iPhone 10, but is now universal across all devices.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. So, for example, probably not all of it, but the home button stuff, obviously. But the way you access like the control center, for example, is now a swipe from the top right, which is a gesture that debuted on the iPhone 10, but is now across the system. It's kind of like a baby step way to get there because I feel like there's a really big jump that occurs when you get rid of the home button and you have to use gestures for everything. And it may be a bit overwhelming, but you can experience a lot of it now just by getting iOS 12 and then go to the final. And I feel like the gesture stuff from the iPhone 10 or 10s or whatever will start to make more sense if you do it in that progression. I remember a year ago when I got the iPhone 10, I was like, what is this? And after a while, you're like, okay, I get it. We've been doing, side swipes, in mobile systems for a long time. It becomes natural, but it's just interesting to me that they brought a lot of it forward to iOS 12. That's just a thought. But anyway, it's anyone who has an iPhone 10 upgraded to this thing. I don't mean to make this personal, but that's an idiotic upgrade to make, unless you're on the iPhone upgrade program
Yep.
and you literally just want to get a new iPhone every year. Then in that case, okay, fine. But if you paid $1,000 for this thing, and you're like, I just want gold, I just it's just a stupid decision. But the older your iPhone, and you're in a good position, I think, the more it makes sense. I just, it's refined. It is to hardware. I think I don't have one, but I mean, it is to hardware what iOS 12 is to the software. It's a refinement of everything that was right, and improvements were necessary, and not a bunch of flashy new features. And I actually think that's pretty cool.
I think you're pretty cool, Paul.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, folks. So that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow, because tomorrow's Wednesday, and on Wednesday we do podcasts. So have yourselves a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.